Jacob Cain did not believe in getting involved in other people's troubles. Not anymore. Not after losing his wife and daughter and burying the man he used to be. But the night he walked into Brennan's saloon in Deadwood and saw Sarah Coulter standing in the corner, he felt something shift in his chest like a door unlocking after years of silence. The place smelled like whiskey, sweat, and danger. Men crowded around a crooked table lit by one dusty lantern. Words were sharp. Laughter was mean. And in the middle of it all stood Sarah, 26 years old, her back straight, her jaw set, her gray eyes burning with fear she refused to show. They were talking about her like she wasn't even a person, like she was part of the furniture. Silas Coulter, her dead husband's brother, leaned forward with a grin that made Jacob's stomach turn. 2 weeks, Vic Brennan said, tapping the table with fat fingers. If you can't pay your brother's $300, she pays it. And we all know how she'll be paying. Some men laughed. Others licked their lips. Sarah didn't flinch. But Jacob saw the truth in her eyes. She was trapped, cornered, trying to decide whether to run or bite. Jacob meant to look away. He meant to mind his own business. But when Sarah's eyes lifted and locked with his for a single heartbeat, something inside him cracked wide open. He had come to town to sell furs and buy ammunition. He planned to leave before dawn. But now he stood there frozen, watching a woman being bargained over like a sack of grain. And he realized he couldn't walk out that door. Not tonight. Stay with me. What happened next changed both their lives. Sarah Coulter didn't have the luxury of hope. When her husband died in a mine collapse, the only thing she got from him was his last name and debts that belonged to someone else. She worked long hours in Brennan's saloon, washing dishes, wiping tables, sweeping floors. She did everything but sell her body, and she intended to keep it that way. But $300 might as well have been $3,000. Brennan knew it. Silas knew it. The whole town knew it. That night, Sarah sat in her tiny rented room above Emma Hartford's boarding house. The walls were thin. The lamp burned low. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked older, worn out, but her eyes were still steady. Still stubborn. Still fighting. A knock came at the door. "Sarah, you've got a visitor," Emma's voice said, tight with worry. When Sarah opened the door, Jacob Cain stood in the hallway, hat in hand. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered with the rough, quiet look of a man who lived far from town. His beard was dark with threads of gray. His eyes were pale blue and steady, not wandering over her the way most men's did. "Ma'am," he said. His voice sounded like wind scraping over stone. "If you're willing, I'd like to speak with you." Sarah crossed her arms. If Brennan sent you, he didn't. They stared at each other in the dim hallway. After a moment, she stepped aside and let him in. Emma hesitated, protective, but Sarah nodded. Emma left reluctantly. Jacob stood in the center of Sarah's small room, looking too large for the space. He didn't waste time. "I need someone to cook and mend through the winter," he said. "I live 15 miles up in the Black Hills. Cabin's good, roof holds. I'll pay your debt to Brennan, all $300. You'd work it off for 1 year." Sarah's heart slammed hard. "And what else would I be expected to give?" "Nothing," he said firmly. "You'd have your own room, food, heat, safety. I'm not looking for a wife. I'm looking for someone who won't burn coffee or sew buttons too tight." "Why me?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Because you need out of Deadwood, and I need help I can trust. And because when I saw your face tonight, I knew Brennan would break you if you stayed. You're stronger than that." Sarah studied him. She'd learned how to read men. The liars, the users, the dangerous ones. Jacob Cain was dangerous, yes, but not in that way. Not in a way that made her chest tighten with dread. "I sleep alone," she said. "Agreed. And when the year is done, I leave free?"
"You leave free," she nodded slowly.
"Then we have a deal." The next morning, Jacob laid $300 in cash on Brennan's table. Sarah watched from the stairs. Brennan's pig-small eyes glittered. "You're making a mistake, Cain," Brennan said. A woman like that is trouble. That's my problem now, Jacob replied. 2 hours later, Sarah rode out of Deadwood on a stubborn mule, her hands gripping the saddle horn, her stomach twisting with fear and something that felt almost like relief. Jacob rode ahead on his gray gelding, silent and steady. By midday, they stopped at a cold mountain stream. Jacob filled a tin cup and handed it to her first. Only after she drank did he drink himself. A small thing, but no man had ever done that for her. That night they camped under the pines. Jacob cooked beans and salt pork, set her portion down, then took his own and sat on the far side of the fire. Firelight carved shadows across his face, making him look wild and haunted at the same time. "Why do you live all the way out here?" Sarah finally asked. "Had a house once," he said. "Near the river. A wife. A daughter." His voice was flat. "I left to fight the Sioux. Came back 6 months too late." Pain flickered in his eyes, sharp as a blade. Sarah swallowed. "I'm sorry." He poked the fire. "Mountains are quiet. Easier." Later, when she lay down, Jacob moved his bedroll far away from her. "You'll freeze over there," she said. "You'll sleep safer with space between us," he answered. For the first time in 2 years, Sarah closed her eyes without fear. The cabin appeared at dawn the next day. 2 rooms, thick logs, stone fireplace, smoke curling from last winter's soot. Jacob gave her the larger room without hesitation. And just like that, their strange, quiet life began. Winter in the Black Hills did not care about the past. It did not care about debts, losses, or broken hearts. It came hard, early, and without apology. By mid-November, snow buried the world outside the cabin in a deep, white silence. The wind pressed against the walls like a living thing, but inside, life settled into a steady rhythm. Sarah cooked, swept, mended clothes, kept the fire alive. Jacob chopped wood, hunted, checked traps, repaired the roof before the first heavy storm. They spoke only when needed, simple words about food, weather, chores. But silence had its own weight, its own language. A month passed, and that silence began to change. Sarah began to notice Jacob in small ways. The careful way he cleaned his rifle every night, like it was something sacred. The scar running along his arm, pale and ridged, that he never talked about. The way he always washed his hands before every meal. A habit from a gentler life he no longer had. And Jacob noticed her. She felt it. In the way his eyes paused when she moved hair from her face. In the way he stepped aside, giving her space, careful never to brush her hand. Distance, but not coldness. Caution, not rejection. One night, a month into winter, Sarah woke screaming. The dream was sharp. Brendan's hands, Silas's voice, men laughing. Her breath came fast. Her hands shook. When she lifted her head, Jacob was already in her doorway, rifle in hand, eyes wild, scanning for danger. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing. Just a dream." He lowered the rifle slowly. For a long moment he stood frozen, caught between wanting to comfort her and fearing he'd cross a line. Then he quietly stepped out and returned with a tin cup of water. He placed it on the table beside her bed and stepped back. "Bad dreams don't mean you're weak," he said softly. "They mean you lived through something worth dreaming about." The truth of it hit her harder than the dream itself. "Why did you really help me, Jacob?" she whispered. His jaw clenched. 5 years ago, I wasn't there when my family needed me. I can't fix that, but I can stop someone else from being hurt when I'm standing right in front of them. He turned before she could reply, but she lay awake long after he left, the taste of cold water on her tongue, wondering how a man so quiet could speak words that burrowed straight into her heart. Days passed. Snow deepened. The world shrank into the size of the 2-room cabin. They began talking more, short stories at first, then longer ones. Sarah spoke of her husband, a good man but a dreamer who gambled more than he planned. She never told him she understood, not before he died. And now she could never fix that. Jacob spoke of Lily, his wife, who sang while she cooked, It annoyed him then. He would give anything to hear it now. He said it with a voice tight and uneven, a man remembering love and losing it all over again. Sarah reached across the space between them, rested her hand on his, only for a moment, only to say, "I see you." He didn't pull away. Something changed after that. Sarah noticed the strength in Jacob's shoulders when he split wood, the gentleness in his hands when he cleaned his rifle, the quiet way he listened, the softness behind the hard lines in his face. And Jacob noticed her, every little thing, the soft hum she made when she cooked, the way her gray eyes warmed when she focused, the loose strand of auburn hair she tucked behind her ear, the curve of her neck when she leaned over the wash basin. One afternoon, she went to fetch water from the stream. She saw him bathing. He stood waist deep in the freezing current, water sliding over his scarred back. His skin carried the marks of battles he never spoke about. She knew she should turn away. She didn't. When he turned and saw her, neither moved. The air felt tight, charged, like lightning just before it strikes. "Sarah," he said. Her heart jumped. She fled back to the cabin. That night, the silence between them was different, sharp, heavy, burning. Jacob's eyes drifted toward her again and again, catching the firelight on her face, her hair, her lips. She felt his gaze. She held it. Something deep and terrifying moved between them. "Jacob," she said softly. He stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "You should be afraid," he said. "I'm not afraid of you. You should be afraid of this. Afraid of what happens when we cross a line we can't uncross." He ran a shaking hand through his hair. "You still owe me 7 months. I will not take advantage of that. What if I'm offering?" He turned away like her words burned. "Then you're not thinking clearly." "Jacob, when your debt is paid," he said, voice rough. "If you still feel this way, then we talk. Not before. You deserve a choice that belongs to you, not to the winter or the cabin or to me." He left the room, stepping into the snow outside, leaving her with the fire and the wild ache in her chest. The blizzard came in late December, fierce, sudden. Jacob went to check his trap line before dawn. He didn't come back that night. The wind howled like a living thing. Snow beat against the walls. Sarah stayed awake, pacing, stoking the fire, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since she was a child. By sunrise, she couldn't wait anymore. She wrapped herself in every warm piece of clothing she owned and went out into the storm, fighting every step. She found him half buried in a snowdrift, barely conscious, ice clinging to his beard and lashes. His skin was cold as stone. "Jacob!" she screamed. "Jacob, stay with me." Dragging him home nearly broke her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Inside the cabin, she stripped off his frozen clothes, wrapped him in blankets, built the fire high until the room burned warm. She pressed her body against his, sharing every bit of heat she had left. Hours later, he opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Sarah's tear-streaked face beside him. "Sarah," he whispered. She kissed him, desperate, fierce, full of everything she had held inside. "Your debt," he breathed. "Sarah, we shouldn't." "To hell with my debt," she said, voice shaking. "I'm not with you because I owe you. I'm with you because when I thought I lost you, I realized I cannot remember my life before you, and I don't want to." He pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. "If we do this," she whispered, "it's us. No bargains. No debts. Just us." They held each other as the storm raged outside, choosing each other in the quiet, burning space between two hearts that had been lonely far too long. The storm passed, but its mark stayed on both of them. After that night, nothing went back to how it was. Sarah moved through the cabin with a softer step, a steadier breath. Jacob watched her with a look that held both fear and a quiet, growing hope. They did not rush anything. They didn't need to. Something had already changed in the air between them, something that felt like it had been waiting a long time to be found. January brought clearer skies, By February, the snow had settled into deep white banks along the pines. Life inside the cabin became warmer, easier. They cooked meals together. They spoke more. Sometimes she read aloud from an old book she found in his trunk. Sometimes he taught her small things about the forest, like how to tell when a storm was coming or which tracks belonged to elk and which to wolves. But peace in the mountains never lasted long. One morning, Sarah looked out the window and went still. 3 riders were making their way through the snow toward the cabin. She recognized the one in front even before he raised his hand in greeting. Silas. Her breath left her. Jacob was already outside chopping wood. Sarah burst from the cabin, her voice tight with fear. Jacob, they're here? He saw the riders and nodded once. Calm, controlled. He set the axe aside and walked to the porch, rifle resting easy in his hand. Silas reined in his horse, a smug smile twisting his mouth. Cain, he called. I'm here for my sister-in-law. She's not leaving, Jacob said. That's not your decision. Silas's 2 men shifted in their saddles. They looked mean enough, but not loyal. Hired hands more than friends. Silas continued. Brennan made me an offer. A miner up in Helena wants a wife. 10 head of cattle for the right woman. Sarah will settle my debts nicely. Sarah stepped out onto the porch. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. I'm not going with you, Silas. His expression hardened. Don't start acting like you got choices. I have plenty of choices, she said, and not one of them leads back to you. Silas's face twisted with anger. Your husband died working that mine. You owe the family.
I owe nothing,
Sarah snapped. I checked the law in Hill City. Your debts aren't mine. They never were. Silas froze. For the first time, he looked unsure. Jacob stepped between them, quiet but solid as a wall. You heard her. Leave. Silas looked at the rifle in Jacob's hands, then at the hard line of Jacob's jaw, then at the snow all around them with no witnesses. One of his hired men muttered, Boss, this ain't worth it. Silas cursed under his breath, yanked his reins, and turned his horse around. This isn't over, he growled. Then come back yourself next time, Jacob said. Don't send other men to do your talking. Silas didn't answer. He rode away fast, his men scrambling to keep up. As soon as they were out of sight, Sarah's legs gave out. Jacob caught her, holding her tight against his chest. It's not over, she whispered. No, he said, but we'll face whatever comes next. Together. When March arrived and the trail finally cleared, Sarah insisted they ride to Deadwood to end the fight at its root. Jacob didn't like it, but he knew better than to argue with a woman who'd already fought her way free once. Deadwood was the same, loud, muddy, full of smoke and danger. But Sarah wasn't the same woman who had been sold in the corner of Brennan's saloon. She walked through town with her head high. Jacob followed close, silent as a shadow. Brennan was sitting at his usual table when they walked in. The room fell quiet. Well, Brennan said with a grin, the widow returns. Sarah didn't flinch. I came to end this. Brennan leaned back. Silas owes me money. I don't owe you anything, he smirked. This is Deadwood, sweetheart. The law doesn't mean much here. It does when the whole town hears it. The saloon door opened again. Emma Hartford walked in, followed by 5 other women, wives, widows, mothers. They stood behind Sarah like a wall. Emma crossed her arms. We're witnesses. Silas's debt is his own, not hers. Sarah stepped closer to Brennan's table. Jacob will pay the $300, and after that, we're done. If you ever threaten me again, I'll make sure every woman in Deadwood knows exactly how you run your business. The saloon had never been so quiet. Brennan looked from Sarah to Emma, to the women behind her. He wasn't afraid of guns or men, but women who talked, women who warned other women. That could ruin him. Finally, he laughed, but it was thin. Fine. Put the money down. Jacob placed the gold coins on the table. Brennan counted them slowly, his jaw tight. You've got spine, girl. Don't come back here. Don't worry, Sarah said. I won't. On the ride home, something felt different, lighter. The kind of quiet that came after a long storm, when the world finally let itself breathe again. When they reached the ridge above the cabin, Sarah stopped her horse. Jacob did too, turning toward her. "My debt is paid," she said. 1 full year. Jacob's face went still. "Yes. So if I stay now," she looked at him, her eyes steady and full. "It's because I choose to." Fear flickered across his face, but it was the hopeful kind, the kind that came from wanting something too much. She smiled. "Can I stay anyway?" Jacob didn't speak. He couldn't. He just dismounted, walked to her horse, and lifted her down gently, his hands warm around her waist. When her feet touched the ground, he kissed her with all the love he had been afraid to show. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay as long as you want. Forever, if you want." Forever sounds right. 3 years later, Emma Hartford wrote to her sister back east. "Sarah Coulter is now Sarah Cain. She and Jacob married in the spring. No children yet, but you can feel peace in that cabin. Real peace. She teaches reading to the miners' children who wander through, and Jacob built an extra room for travelers, especially women who need a place to breathe. They do good up there on that mountain. I visited last month. They sit on the porch at sunset, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. They do not talk much. They don't need to. Everything they survived speaks for them. Deadwood hasn't changed. The world hasn't changed. But they have. And sometimes that's enough. Because up in those mountains, a widow bought back her freedom, and a quiet mountain man found someone to share the silence with. 2 wounded people found a place to heal. Some stories end in gunfights. This one ends with peace. And maybe that's the best ending of all.